I explained that Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion, that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada.
The latest tension between Canada and the United States is not about troops or borders. It's about a bridge, a major international crossing that connects Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan. But behind the concrete and steel lies a political dispute that has sparked strong reactions on both sides of the border. At the center of this debate is a simple question: who paid for it and who controls it? Now listen to the key clarification.
The Prime Minister was patiently explaining something to an erratic elderly relative who was perhaps vexed about something he didn't quite understand, and trying to talk him off of a ledge, so to speak. And I thought that was the tone from on both sides of the border. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, said as much. The Prime Minister here, Premier Doug Ford, you had a clip earlier of. It was always about, just a reminder, Mr. President, this bridge, which, by the way, the first American money that flowed for this bridge was by President Trump in 2017, $15 million for part of the infrastructure on the American side. So even his own rationale for this crazy tweet where he was complaining about that it was Canadian territory on both, or Canadians had paid for both sides of the bridge, and the Canadians controlled this and the Canadians controlled that. That was all wrong. We have an op-ed in our paper today from Governor Rick Snyder, the former Republican governor of Michigan, and he also debunked what Mr. Trump was saying. And it was an erratic late night tweet from Trump, and I'm glad that everyone sort of turns the temperature down in this country when something like this happens, rather than pouring gasoline on the fire. And I mean, the bridge will open. It's named the Gordie Howe Bridge after the great Detroit Red Wings star who was born in Saskatchewan. So it is a Canadian-built, Canadian-financed piece of infrastructure, but it is going to be shared with the state of Michigan.
The numbers are important. Canada invested more than $4 billion to build the bridge. Ownership is shared between the government of Canada and the state of Michigan. That means it is not controlled by one side alone. But recently, the discussion shifted. Claims were made suggesting that Canada had full control, or that the deal was unfair to the United States. That's when political leaders stepped in to correct the record. And this is where the tone changed.
Things are getting harder for the president, and in part because people sort of know how to respond and react to him now?
Yeah, I do, Rosie. And as Sherelle was mentioning, that vote in Congress that Trump lost, the 6 Republicans voted with the Democrats to say that about tariffs on Canada shouldn't be permitted. We're going to have a Supreme Court ruling on the legality of Mr. Trump's tariffs. I also think that we should take heed of something the commentator David Frum has been saying for some time now, and it's Trump is getting weaker, not stronger. So the longer we wait to renegotiate CUSMA or whatever the future trade agreement on this continent looks like or is called, the weaker Mr. Trump is. The midterm elections will not be kind to his party, according to public opinion polls. Right now, he has a 36% approval rating in the United States. Prices are going up. Jobs are being lost. And I think at a certain point, more and more Republicans will turn on him as their own political survival becomes problematic. And I mean, Rosie, you know this. You've covered politics a long time, as I have. When people's own seats and own political futures are at stake, they find a way of surviving on their own. It becomes every person for themselves, and I think that's what we're going to see in the months ahead, because Trump's polling is not going to go up, and there's no indication why it would go up. He's in trouble politically.
What we're seeing here is more than just a disagreement over infrastructure. It reflects a pattern. A late-night post from President Trump raised questions about control and funding. But officials on both sides, including Michigan's governor and former governor Rick Snyder, publicly rejected those claims.
The first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey. What the is he talking?
After Bill Maher's show, Trump quickly fired off a rambling social media post, saying the Chinese hockey quip was jokingly stated. and renewing his anti-Canadian rhetoric, saying the country's leaders are a disaster to deal with and have ripped off the United States. The Trump rant comes as he faces blowback for threatening to block the Gordie Howe Bridge between Windsor and Detroit, a project paid for by Canada and jointly owned with Michigan, despite the president claiming otherwise.
Enough is enough. The president is wrong on this matter.
Even more interesting, records show that in 2017, President Trump himself approved $15 million in U.S. funding for infrastructure on the American side of the bridge. That detail matters because it shows that this project has always been a shared effort, not a takeover. But this bridge dispute does not exist in isolation. It connects directly to a bigger issue: tariffs, trade, and political pressure. And now the conversation moves beyond concrete and steel.
This bridge is of a vital link between the U.S. and Canada and Michigan and Ontario. It's the lifeblood of the auto industry, agriculture, tourism. It employed thousands of building trades, men and women on both sides of the border. It will employ a lot of people.
This is where the situation becomes more serious. 6 Republicans joined Democrats to oppose tariffs on Canada. A Supreme Court ruling on the legality of those tariffs may soon follow. And public opinion numbers show President Trump at a 36% approval rating in the United States. Prices are rising. Jobs are being lost. And economic pressure is growing. In Washington, political survival often changes behavior. When lawmakers begin worrying about their own seats, loyalty can shift.
Many American workers were involved in building this bridge, which is now nearly complete, and yet President Trump is saying none were, and that no American steel was involved, and there was American steel involved.
Yeah.
How does that message get out to people?
Well, the problem, what he's saying is not true. He's badly informed. In his first term, he had some staff around him that were well informed and tried to restrain him. Now, he's got a lot of crackpots working for him and telling him things that simply aren't true. The fact is, the bridge is complete. We've been planning a major celebration, ribbon cutting, for perhaps late March or early April. I've actually talked to the people at the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority and our governor, who is a strong supporter of this, as our previous governors are, about making sure we include as many people as possible in the celebration. When we open this up, it's done. So it's ready to be opened. I don't know what to tell you other than I'm not surprised in one sense, because Mr. Trump likes to try to extort things from people, even when he says things that aren't true.
That's the reality of election cycles and midterm politics. And that may explain why some Republicans are beginning to distance themselves from the tariff strategy. For Canada, this creates a different kind of opportunity. If political pressure inside the United States increases, future trade negotiations, including the future of the North American Trade Agreement, may look very different. But uncertainty remains. Because while Congress debates and courts review policies, executive power still exists. And that means more sudden moves are always possible.